two reports with me. One is the Reuters report, and another one is the Reporters Sans Frontiers report. Reporters Sans Frontiers report actually has come up with a statement saying that press freedom predators gallery. And this press freedom predators gallery has all the heads of the states around not only from India, but our neighboring countries also, which means we are looking at shrinking of democratic spaces within South Asia. That is the first one. And the most important thing about the RSF report is that India has slipped to 142nd place among 180 countries in the World Press Freedom Index. This is a steep decline, and for a democratic country like India to occupy 142nd space is not an encouraging one. In terms of international recognition of our press freedom, this is the most visible, measured indicator what we have. And then importance of the Reuters report is that it forces us to think about how we editors and media owners can look at keeping journalism and as an effective interventionist tool, because it says that 73% of the English speaking readers reach news through mobile. If people are going to reach news through mobile, what is the fate of long form journalism? If we think that journalism has two functions, one is to inform and another one is to interpret, and I don't think we can inform and interpret effectively if you're going to stick to short, crisp reportage. Within 50 words to 150 words, I don't think we can interpret any major issues, even on this issue of sedition. It needs an amount of meditative quality in our prose. And to have that meditative quality in our prose, and if that is going to be access to this mobile device, what is the fate in front of us? That is the one aspect. Another thing is the way some of the words have lost their original meaning. For instance, the word growth always meant that we are going to have a more inclusive, more diverse growth. Therefore, but today what we are witnessing is sort of a proliferation rather than a plurality. Well, we have about 500 cameras focusing on a single individual rather than 500 cameras bringing out 500 elements of a particular development. That's the reason when Sukumar spoke about this young photographer who was killed yesterday, he becomes important because he was not following these 500 cameras. He went out to record something on his own. When I entered journalism way back in 84, 85, the most interesting one was the way Bhopal was covered. Some of the photographers went around the Union Carbide factory and they managed to get different types of images. We were not getting 500 live stream of the same image. Today, for instance, just look at the Supreme Court reportage. Every camera will be focused on that Supreme Court building. Therefore, I will be having about 700 news channels today in India, but 700 news channels are streaming the same idea or the same visual. With this proliferation of the cost of plurality is the one which is skewing the news system. And that's the reason we are not able to confront the hate which is flowing from social media. Partly the social media hate gets amplified because we are not able to come up with multiple pushback systems. Earlier, it was a common fact in the newsroom to do follow-up. If any newspaper breaks a story, other newspaper used to take up and do a follow-up. But what is happening right now is nobody is doing any follow-up. It comes in a particular newspaper and it dies with that newspaper. For instance, even that Rafael investigation. Just compare the Rafael investigation with the Bofors investigation. Everybody picked up the Bofors investigation. There was a series of follow-ups done by others. What happened with the Rafael? Why nobody is picking it up and why there is no follow-up? That's another issue which is worrying. In this context, as a person who's handling complaints for a newspaper, we are also subjected to a different type of attack, which is called the transatlantic attack. If we get more than 150 complaints before 6 o'clock, it's very, very clear that it is the transatlantic IT cell which is very, very active. Because I see the newspaper only by 6:15. But if I'm going to have about 150 complaints before I wake up, I know from where it is coming. And there is also a certain amount of structured delegitimizing of opinion writers. These opinion writers are called liberals and libtards and whatnot. Never their content has been questioned. The delegitimization which gets amplified is the one which is worrying, and we don't know how to confront this delegitimization which is happening through this transatlantic time differential, which works very well for them. Only giveaway in that is the most of these complaints are identical in their construct. In fact, the first sentence in most of these complaints will be, I'm neither a BJP member nor an RSS sympathizer, but then you know what is coming. There's a giveaway first line which happens quite often, but despite the giveaway first line, the amplification of this campaign seems to be much bigger than uh, serious data-based, evidence-based reportage. The entire COVID-related unrecorded deaths, which the data team worked for nearly 2 weeks before they put it out, has a much lesser play than certain types of crude attack on edit writers and the editorial page contributors. But this is another issue for which I don't think it is. I don't think we can put it purely as a legalistic issue, because it's not coming purely from the state. It's also coming from the people who have bought into this idea. Therefore, for the first time, what we are seeing is that the privileged middle class thinks that they are a victim. If the privileged class is going to play the victim card, what is the idea of empowerment? Because at some level, we have been trained to look at idea of empowerment. Inform, interpret, and illuminate, the three I's of the journalism, is supposed to help people empower. But if the privileged people are feeling that they are victims, then the narrative gets completely skewed. Then it becomes either or. And this either or debate is the one which is really hurting, primarily because we are in a new situation where we have a extraordinary high reach, but that reach has nothing to do with our revenue or connections. I can reach from Boston to Brisbane, but definitely the revenue for my publication would have been much lower than what it was, say, 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Therefore, this reach and revenue mismatch is another issue. Because of the reach, we tend to keep investing more on those technologies, but that reach is not converting into a sustainable revenue. And this conundrum we are not able to crack properly even now. But in all these things, one issue which is completely missing the governmental regulatory framework is the relationship between the content and the carrier. In the last 10 years, the carrier companies have become more powerful than any of the content carrier companies. Whether you're a newspaper or a television channel, you are at the mercy of somebody who delivers. It can be your ISP company, or it can be your DTH company, it can be your cable operator. They decide on which band you are going to be in. And the carriage fees for the broadcasting industry apparently is 3 times their content generating expenditure. If I'm going to spend 3 times more on reaching people, then it becomes a completely more difficult one. Therefore, this content carrier uh, conflict or gets another layer where the carrier company also becomes a media company. For instance, Reliance Jio is a huge carrier company, and Reliance has Network 18, which is a big content company. Then this carrier is no longer a neutral carrier, and this carrier becomes a selective carrier. It amplifies certain types of news and it reduces the importance of some other forms of news. As Sukumar said earlier about the algorithm driven mediation of information, what we are witnessing is that this power given to these three huge Silicon Valley based conglomerates, whether it's Google or Facebook or Twitter, is that the web, what we wanted of Tim Berners-Lee, was supposed to be decentralization to the level of individuals. Now, what we are witnessing is centralization of three major companies in Silicon Valley. Therefore, from nearly 2 billion nodes, what we thought we are going to have, we are having three mega consolidation. And these three mega consolidation is creating a new problem because the government has the right to switch on and switch off. And this is what we witnessed in Kashmir. If we have decided to reach people through digital place, and if the government decides to switch off the internet, how are we prepared to negotiate that reality? There was one level, this entire consolidation is handing over much bigger power to the state. And most of the corporations are willing to toe the executive's line on shutdown request or even take down request. And we don't have a clear data on what basis the shutdown request or the takedown request are being sent and on what basis they have been complied with. All we get is annual numbers at the end of the year saying that 185 takedown requests had come or 72 shutdown requests were there. But we don't know what exactly prompted these things. Therefore, we are having a very, very opaque regulatory framework. And we want journalism to be as transparent as possible. And that is a irony with which we are trying to live with. And I think I will also stop here and come back during the Q&A session.